All right, welcome back. We're doing our 5 through 1 top 10 2020 movies. Paul, number 5, go.
Mank.
All right, we'll talk about that later.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're talking about it later. I'll be honest with you.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm glad it's higher on your list. I'm surprised it's not higher on my list, but it is in the top 5. So, but we'll talk.
Well, there you go. It made the top 5. You're welcome, David Fincher. My number 5 is Sound of Metal.
We're going to talk about it in just a sec.
Nice. Okay. Your number 4?
Nomadland, the Academy Award winning Best Picture.
There you go. And it made your number 4.
Yeah, it did, only because I think what you're talking about with how things hit you personally and how you didn't use the word relate, but I could see that that's something you were talking about in the other episode about 40-year-old version. There's something about her that you related to, and you were talking about the New York and you've only been there once, but there's something about that place that seemed familiar. So I think that's why the top 3, they're familiar to me for some reason, even though I have no direct connection with or specific connections with these characters. So I think maybe Nomadland would have been higher if it wasn't for the 3 that are in the top 3. It's just a position thing. I have seen Nomadland twice now, and I started watching it a third time just the other night under the eyes of this is now an Academy Award winning picture. And there's nothing I would change about anything I said about it originally. It's just beautiful. It's a stunning, simple story. And her performance, I'm surprised they saw it for what it was. I'm surprised it's such a subtle performance. It's so, this time that I watched it, I'm about 45 minutes into it again. And she literally has a lump in her throat the whole entire movie. You know that experience when you're thinking about something and you get a lump in your throat, and you know, it can bring you to tears. It cannot. It can water your eyes a little bit. It can make you a little stuffy, but it's a feeling. A friend of mine's cat died, and I called him the next day. I said, "How you doing?" And he said, "I still have a lump in my throat." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I knew exactly where he was at. She has that the whole movie. It's so touching and so simple. And she's so reserved because there's a scene in the movie, and there's no spoilers for this movie. It's cinematic art. It would be like trying to explain a Degas or the Mona Lisa to somebody. You can describe it every which way you possibly could, but until you experience it, you won't know what it's like until you experience it. So I don't think there's real spoilers in this film, but there is a scene, just in case, this might be a spoiler. I'm saying it because I'm really bad at that. The scene where the dishes are taken out of her van and they break.
Yeah.
And if and when you ever watch it again, watch her reaction. She does this kind of like salute stand where she just goes completely rigid, but she never really raises her voice. And he's like, "Sorry." She goes, "Stand over there." And it's the most aggressive she is in the whole film. But I think she did the polar opposite of what most people would have done. The choice she made was to hold it in instead of let it out, because she's a substitute teacher. She works with the public. She works in a factory with a lot of people. She's following around all these strangers who become her friends. So she obviously has the personality where she has to maybe tap down her personality a little bit to not show people a side of her that might be temperamental or might be angry or aggressive, because she's learned that. And I was just blown away by her. And then there was shot after shot after shot. I didn't realize that the rock that she has at the end of the film, you remember what I'm talking about when she throws the rock in the fire? When they all throw rocks in the fire? Okay, that's definitely a spoiler. I'm going to get a little verklempt about it because it was so stirring the second time I saw it. She puts the stone in front of the camera, and then the shot is of inside the rock and all the scenery through. And I was just mesmerized by, that's what the choice Chloe Zhao decided to go with. And it just is epic. It says so much about the human existence, all in one little rock, all in one little shot, because that's exactly what every human being who picked up that rock would have done. They would have looked through it, you know? And I don't know. I just can't say enough about the cinematography. I can't say enough about The performances, I can't say enough about it. It is a mesmerizingly beautiful film. So I'm glad it received everything that it received.
Yeah, me too. You know, that scene that you're talking about with David Strathairn helping her with her plates. The thing I love about that scene is that it's purposeful for her character because she is inherently reserved about accepting help from other people. And at the beginning of the film, we really see her not wanting to rely on anyone. She's lost her husband and she's trying to find her way through this world, but she doesn't want to let someone in. And this very, very small instance where she does allow someone to help her out immediately backfires on her. And so she's having to process all of that and not explode at this guy. But then it's a step back in her ability to accept help and accept interactions with other people. And I think the film chips away at that as it goes on, chips away at that resistance to that. But it's just that's a very specific and short instance of kind of like, see, I tried to let somebody in and then they screwed up my plates.
Well, I also think it's about having to let go of the past. And sometimes the past will let go of you first. And that's a symbol for that. But the top 4 movies I've realized has, for me, whether or not anybody else sees them this way, they're about forgiveness. And this might be a spoiler, but they did show this clip quite a bit on Twitter, so I feel a little bit better about speaking about it. When she talks about her experience with her husband, it's closer to the end of the movie, and she's talking to Bob, Santa, and she's saying that I've spent a long time just remembering my husband, not really pursuing any new life. And, you know, she basically says, I don't think that's what he would want me to do. This is my interpretation. It's not what she says. But I realize at that moment, she's forgiving herself for being stuck and that the plates are broken. The past is gone. She gives away her storage. She ends that chapter and she continues on. But it's about forgiving. It's about forgiving herself because she says in that speech that if she left Empire, the town, after her husband Bo died, that's all he was that town. He didn't know his parents. They didn't have children. There was no connection to anything in the outside world. So if I left Empire, she says, then that means that I would have left him and that he didn't exist. And the movie is about her forgiving herself for not allowing herself to let go. That's what I got. So it's, oh my God, it's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. All right. My number 4 is Palm Springs.
Oh, cool. Wow. High up there, huh?
I love that movie. I love Palm Springs because it's so easy to just slip into that movie and the movie knows exactly what it is and it runs on a very specific set of rules. It doesn't seem like it's very serious about it, but it does what I think something like Groundhog Day, which it gets compared to all the time. It's self-aware, unlike Groundhog Day was. I think they are able to kind of mess with that. And I think that a lot of that has to do with generational changes. Just things were different in 1990 versus 2020. And so they're able to kind of play with expectations and they're able to put in this kind of a really cute, romantic element to this, but also have some kind of like meat on the bone to their interactions. And I think that both Kristen Milioti and Andy Samberg were great in the movie. And I think that it goes to show you that you don't have to spend a bunch of money on a movie to make it fun and engaging and to make it make sense within its own structure. And J.K. Simmons is in there for a handful of scenes and he's just absolutely amazing. So the whole setup of this film was great initially when I heard about it, and then it definitely delivered for me. And it is one of those movies where you can just put it in and watch it. And if I had cable and it was on and it was just right in the middle of it, I would sit down and watch the rest of it. And I will be sad if they ever take it off of Hulu, but I would probably have to buy it if they take it off of Hulu. But yeah, I've probably watched it 3 or 4 times. I even watched the commentary. They actually did a commentary for it It was Kristen Milioti, and I actually think it was all of them. They kind of like round robined it, and they had the director, writer, and then, Kristen Milioti and Andy Samberg kind of talked about the production, and it was a very quick production and just goofed off and all kinds of stuff, and had a couple little tidbits of information. But yeah, I think the music in the film was great, and there's all kinds of little Easter eggs in there, and it just works.
Well, it was my number 10 only because my list is stacked. In any other year, it probably would be higher, but it's also a film that I have not forgotten about. I think about it often. I get simultaneously a little choked up, and a little smile comes to my lips because it's so heartwarming. At the same time, it is drop dead funny, and it does not pull any punches when it comes to some of the jokes, and I like that. Bold choices always win with me. But if you're going to define this movie in a genre, one might call it a romantic comedy, but that, for whatever reason, has a negative connotation nowadays because of 21 Dresses and all these movies that are considered romantic comedies. It really started with You Got Mail and all those Nora Ephron things. But if you're going to call it a romantic comedy, I think it's a compliment because it is the best of its genre. It takes its genre and takes it to another level. It has a metaphysical side to it that I wasn't expecting. That when we talked about it on the original podcast, I was like, I just accepted it for what it was because there they were. Why not? Sure. If you're going to question some kind of weird time travel thing or some kind of like loop in time thing, you can't question that if you're going to question the metaphysical thing that happened. So you just kind of go with the flow. But it's such an easy going movie that you can accept those things. And the two leads are impeccable. And I hope they end up doing something like every 10 years. They get into their late 30s, early 40s, and they do something together. They get to their 50s and they do something together. I hope they do something all the way up to their 80s and 90s because they have something that makes you connect to the movie. And so, yeah, it's really well done. I can't wait to see it again. I have not seen it again, but it's always like the one that just gets missed. Oh, I got to watch that again. Oh, I got to watch that. Oh, I want to see Palm Springs again. Oh, no, I'll watch that next. So it is the next film.
Always. All right. Your number 3.
Sound of Metal.
Let's do it.
What I say about film editing.
You
did. Remember what I said? Yeah. I did. I said I didn't think they were going to award it sound editing per se, but it was my pick for sound editing, or I'm sorry, for film editing.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with that opening sequence. It is super hard to film a band in a movie and not make it look like the same things you've seen over and over and over again. And this is a guitar player and a drummer in a small club surrounded by its audience members. How do you film that? And the way that that's edited together, and then the way that he walks out when the buzzing starts in his ear, I think it's the second time they perform together that you see. There was something so impactful about that. I knew what the movie was about, but I didn't know I was going to be in it like that. And as soon as the way that that's all edited together, and he slams the door and he goes up against the fence, and the way she's all of a sudden there, and the whole way that that's edited, I was like, oh, wait, I'm not going to stand beside this film. I'm going to stand in this film. And it tugged my heart. Riz Ahmed's performance is outstanding. There's not a performance in it that stinks. I mean, there's just not. Paul Raci is amazing. There's just so much to this movie. And then the piece de resistance is, how do you convey to people who can hear what it must be like to be deaf? And make that a celebratory thing, not a handicap. And I use that word specifically because it's an old word that really we shouldn't really be using anymore. Special needs, something more positive, something where it doesn't sound like somebody has something wrong with them that they have to live with. It was actually a culture and actually a world where deafness wasn't a handicap. It was an advantage as long as you learned how that advantage worked for you. And I had never seen anything like that before. You see movies all the time about people who have physical issues or genetic issues, my left foot, and you stand beside it because you have nothing really to relate to it. I don't know what it's like to have cerebral palsy, so I wouldn't even know where it begins. Like, I would not that My Left Foot didn't do the exact same thing, because it does draw you in like that. But that movie's really more about something else. But Sound of Metal brings you into a world, one, you didn't even know existed. And then the sound editing, which it also won the Oscar for, which we both picked, I believe, is amazing. And I go back to the same scene with the metal slide in the park where him and the kid are playing because they're done with their little group or whatever. And the way that that's edited and the way that the thudding on the metal happens when a hearing person can hear it versus when a deaf person can feel it, I was like, I think I get it. Like, I think I understand what it must be like. And I don't think that's the purpose of the movie. I don't think the purpose of the movie is to make you feel like what it must be like to be deaf. I don't think that's it. I think it's you overcome something and become a better person because of you overcoming something. That's the movie that it is, at least for me. So I've seen it twice. I can't wait to see it again. I have experienced it loudly on my earbuds. I've experienced it just on my iPad. I was watching a scene on YouTube. There's something about this movie, and I'm glad that it was made, and I'm glad that we got to watch it because it is something special.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that, much like The Father, this movie is able to create an environment that we've never experienced, that I've never experienced before in film. I mean, it is a wholly different experience. And Darius Marder is able to leverage the capabilities of film. You really can't do this in another medium. I mean, you could potentially try to do it in some sort of like audio play or podcast series or something, but really being able to have very familiar visuals and pairing them with this new and different audible experience that we get to hear what is, I guess, a replica of what might be in someone who's experiencing hearing loss, what might be in their head, that is wholly new. And you can understand how it would make someone, especially someone who makes their livelihood and who is so passionate about music and about sound, you can imagine what that would do to a person. And I think that you're right. The scenes at the beginning of the film, they establish a pattern, they establish a relationship. It is all kinds of storytelling, all shoved into 5 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever the pre-hearing loss period is. And it's masterful. It does that in such a great way that we completely understand the relationship between the characters and the roles of the characters and where they're at when this inciting incident starts. And so I think that right there, that's really hard to do. You're right. It is a unique situation. They had a really tall hill to climb, and I think they were able to do it.
Well, I do want to say one last thing on the motif of forgiveness, because I think my top 4 is about that for me. It struck me hard the last time I saw it, the second time I saw it, that he's not coming to accepting his new life. He needs to forgive himself for not letting go of his old life. And so that scene at the very end of the movie is not acceptance for me. It's about forgiving yourself for thinking you knew how your life was supposed to be and having to let that go. But, you can always say to yourself, I've got to let that go. That doesn't mean you forgive yourself for wanting that, forgiving yourself for needing that life. You have to let it go by forgiving yourself for even wanting to hold on to that life. And I think all of that's thrown into that very last scene of the movie.
All right. So it's David Fincher time, because Mank is my number 3. And I love David Fincher. I don't think he can do any wrong when it comes to making movies. But much like I've said in the past, I know that some people have maybe said that this is his masterpiece or whatever, but I think that I want to feel like his next movie is going to be his masterpiece. So I enjoyed the film. I thought that it was what I expected from David Fincher. And he took a subject matter that I didn't know that I wanted to know about. I mean, I like Citizen Kane. I love Citizen Kane, but I didn't know that I wanted to know about the writing of Citizen Kane. But I really didn't know anything about Herman Mankiewicz, and that's the more interesting thing, and that's what he focuses on in the film. So he focuses on that character. And I think that the thing that made Fincher gravitate towards that character is that he is a super talented, super broken man who is able to attract a loving wife and people who want to work with him in spite of himself. And Fincher wants to lock in on that, and he wants to really analyze that. And I did hear a quote that he had, that he said that the thing that draw him to this character is that he's a character at odds with everyone, even himself. So it's like he doesn't know why he's doing what he's doing. It's like, why am I steering my car into the brick wall, but I am still doing it as I'm asking the question? It's that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, David Fincher's got definitely some screws loose up there, but he's so interested in broken people. So he is able to take the precision that he uses in doing an iPhone commercial or in doing a Nike commercial, and he's able to point that at something like this character. And he's able to surround himself with Ren Kleiss, an amazing sound designer. I thought that the sound for this film was amazing. Obviously, Eric Messerschmidt, the first time he's used him in a film, but guess what? He got an Academy Award for it, which I think was actually, I thought that Mank's cinematography was more difficult than Nomadland cinematography to actually make happen. And so I didn't expect the Academy at large to recognize that, but they did. So I thought that was really cool. A great score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross that obviously is against type for them, but at this point, there's no type for them. Like, you just throw it at them and they'll do what you need them to do, which I think is the key to working with David Fincher. Like, I think that he doesn't want, whether it's a production designer or whoever else, he doesn't want you to do you. He wants you to do what's right for, this thing. He's not going to find a costume designer who's specifically good at the 1940s. He's going to find, the right costume designer who's going to, I guess, listen to him and also, figure it out on their own. But yeah, I've watched it twice, and I think I've watched it 3 times. See, I've rewatched a lot of these movies, and just recently too, some of them. And every time I find something new, I see something different, and that is what I'm looking for in my favorite movies. It's less of an emotional reaction for me, and more of an engaging film going experience, and Mank definitely gives that to me.
That's interesting. I think I originally said that it was going to be nominated for like 10 Oscars and it would win only 1, original screenplay, and it's the only one that it wasn't nominated for.
Yeah.
Then on our Oscar podcast, I said, don't count Mank out, because you were like, it's going
over.
Yeah. And I said, I don't know about that. And we talked about cinematography, and we both predicted Nomadland. But in the bottom of my notes, and I'll show it to you, it's got this big, like, etched out Mank. Like, I was rewriting Mank the whole entire time we were talking about Nomadland. And I wish I had said, this is the one that I think it deserves, because I agree with everything that you said. But I do think the screenplay needed to be celebrated, because how do you write a movie about a writer writing one of the most famous movies of all time? How do you do it? How do you imitate the movie? And this has a lot to do with Fincher himself, David Fincher, but this is also in the screenplay, because things are set up like this in screenplays. How do you do the famous Rosebud snow globe scene? How do you do that? How do you imitate that? How do you write that? How do you make that part of your story? How do you put it in there? And they did it brilliantly, both of them, brilliantly. Mm-hmm. And how do you imitate, celebrate, but yet show your own version of that world when it comes to cinematography and production value and the way he shoots the scenes? And when I saw that room with those skylights in the top part of the skylights, and the light was coming straight down, and it's very stark, and it's very much angular, and just like, it seems like hard to breathe in that room. I immediately thought of Citizen Kane. If I had just seen a still of that shot, I would have thought it was from Citizen Kane. So how do you imitate, flatter, tell your own story about one of the most famous movies of all time, if not the most famous movie of all time? How do you do that? And he did it flawlessly. And here's why I say it's his masterpiece, because regardless of what comes next, and I appreciate what you're saying, because I do the same thing in life. You know, it's like, well, their next album. Oh, well, maybe that next show. Not that the first show and that album weren't great. I'm always like, well, what's next? So I understand what you're saying, that maybe David Fincher has another masterpiece in him. But let's say he doesn't. Let's say he still makes quality films that, you know, could possibly one day win him an Academy Award. I guarantee you that this is the film that will be talked about when they talk about his masterpiece, when they talk about his pinnacle, his top, when they talk about a director and a project and a cast and a writer all coming together to create something unusual, but yet exactly how it should be. And I don't know why, but for whatever reason, Mank has been crucified by, I don't know who. I don't know if it's Hollywood, but it has a really bad reputation now. I don't know why. So it's not going to win any of the Oscars. It's just a Hollywood movie that was nominated. I was like, I'm not so sure you can say that. And everybody, here's what gets me about Twitter and people talking about movies. They say that this movie was this and it bothers me. And it's a movie about Hollywood inside Hollywood, about actors inside actors and self-indulgent and blah, 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 blah. But if Chloe Zhao doesn't win, David Fincher will. Wait, what? Wait, you just criticized this movie for 10 minutes and then you say, but it is the runner-up. So if it's good enough to be the runner-up, that means it's good enough to be the winner. So I don't understand any of that. I think in time, a lot of these movies have been appreciated, but they're going to be even more appreciated in time. And I think this is one of them. So there you go.
All right. So your number 2.
Spike Lee is on my list 2 times. The Five Bloods.
Nice.
I think this movie, I have started to rewatch it. I have not rewatched it yet fully. I am afraid to give myself over to it again because it had such an impact on me the first time I saw it. I love the way it looks. I love the way it's shot. The performances are outstanding. We've talked about this umpteenth million time. Delroy Lindo should have been nominated for the Oscar. He just wasn't, but he puts in an Academy Award nominatable performance. I don't know if it was timing that this movie just came out too soon. I don't know what it was, but it is the movie, the director, and the lead actor are all spoken about when it comes to how did they get forgotten? Okay, if it's not Delroy Lindo, then it's Chadwick Boseman. If it's not Delroy Lindo, then it's Anthony Hopkins. That was the conversation. Okay, since Delroy Lindo is not on the list, it's going to be Chadwick Boseman. But if he was on the list, he would be winning it. I don't understand it. That's fine. It's okay. The movie's on the screen. It's there. It has that energy Spike Lee brings to his films. The performances are intense. Like, it's almost hard to watch again. Also knowing what's getting ready to happen. And Chadwick Boseman is in this, and they were talking about a possible second nomination for him. And I haven't really got to the point where I thought that that was something that should have happened, but I love the fact that he was in the conversation because he is a standout in that film. And once again, going back to forgiveness, every single one of those characters, including the son, needs to forgive themselves for their preconceived notions about what they're doing in this movie. The son thinks his father's somebody other than he is. And when he realizes his father isn't and understands where his father's coming from, it's, spoiler, too late. It's too late. And when they realize that they need to go all the way back to a traumatic experience in Vietnam to try to recoup the bones of their friend, Chadwick Boseman, when they're really there for themselves, to forgive themselves for anything that has happened after Nam or in between the movie and what happened at Nam. And it plays out brilliantly. And of course, you get your Spike Lee shot at the end. So I'm good. It's a win-win. It's a spectacular film that, in a way, I'm going to be glad 10 years from now that it got brushed under the carpet, because when people do discover it, they're going to be like, it didn't get nominated. How could it not have been nominated? He wasn't nominated. That's going to be the conversation. And I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, go look up the Actor and the Engineer podcast 10 years ago,
Yeah.
you know, because it really is, it's a special film. And I'm glad that Spike Lee is finally gotten his acclaim by the Academy. Not that that means anything to me because I'm in love with his work anyway. But there's something extremely powerful about the film, but it seems small and large all at the same time. So I would say a cliche that the heart of the film is in the right place, but I don't know how you do that and get away with that without it being melodramatic. And he gets away with it. And some of the dance sequence in the club is great. I've tweeted that a million times because I love it. It's the perfect blend. And then we'll talk about the soundtrack. Terrence Blanchard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Nominated for an Oscar. And of course he was my pick because it was the only person nominated from the film. So it is an Academy Award nominated film. I said this when we were talking about this on the Oscar nomination podcast, that soundtrack is your typical epic, big motion picture soundtrack. And then all of a sudden it diverges into something completely different. And you're like, wait, what's that sound? It's going with that whole epic orchestrated soundtrack that you get from a movie when they're going through the jungle the first time. And then all of a sudden there's like these small little sounds that seem not right. They seem out of place, but then they blend later on with something else. I was like, wow, that's cool because he modernized a score because it has this epic movie feel to it, but it also has these things that are filtered into it that are just mesmerizing. So good for him that he was nominated. It does stand out to me, and I can't wait to fully give myself over to the film again. Hopefully I'll be emotionally capable of dealing with it because it's tough for me. This movie was tough for me, and I can't wait to be able to just watch it for the little nuances that a film this great has.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it is difficult subject matter because you've got these guys who've never really processed what they went through, and the fact that they're utilizing this opportunity to actually process all of the things that they went through so many years ago and how it's affected each of their lives, and most specifically the Delroy character. So yeah, I mean, it's well written, and it's definitely an experience. Great score, you're right. It's a difficult thing for me to want to go back to, because like I felt it, and doesn't mean I don't necessarily want to feel it again. It's just I'm too busy watching Palm Springs.
Well, it's a commitment to an emotional roller coaster, and knowing that going back to it, I think I've put up a resistance to it because I know what I went through and I know what I'm going to go through again. Yeah. So it's like, let's go slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
Slowly.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure my number 2 and your number 1 are the same thing. So
okay,
I'm going to say my number 1, and it's Tenet.
Really?
Yeah. I tried this week. I watched a bunch of movies over again.
So did I, by the way.
I tried to make this not my number 1. And I just love it. I just love Christopher Nolan's Tenet. I know so many people hate it or have so many problems with it, but I still come back to the fact that you get out of it what you put into it, much like Hamilton. We talked about it in our last episode. And I think that it's such a constructed film, and this is Christopher Nolan like to a T. If Inception was Christopher Nolan turned up to 11, this is Christopher Nolan turned up to 1100. So I think that whatever you didn't like about Inception, you're going to hate about Tenet. So all that out of the way, I loved it because it's a structured, I mean, we went back and forth on it, but any question you have about the structure of the film, there's an answer. Now, you may not like the answer necessarily, but there is an answer. And it's something that somebody has thought about. And that is what I respect, is that if you're going to make a movie that is very complex, you need to have thought about contingencies. You need to have thought about exceptions. You need to have thought about these external or edge cases. And I feel like Christopher Nolan, I feel like the film was written in a way that takes into account a lot of those edge cases and works within its own bounds. So that's all I can really ask about a film. And so I think it's a Hollywood movie. I think it's an action movie. I think that it is exciting and it's propulsive, and it has a great score by Ludwig Göransson, and it's well shot, and it's just engaging. It's got a great lead character and a great lead actor in that role with John David Washington. I have seen that movie more than any other movie this year. I just watched it again 2 nights ago because I was like, do I really like this movie that much? But yeah, I don't have a bad thing to say about it. Wow. That's crazy.
Well, it all makes sense. You're a James Bond fan.
That's true.
You're a Raiders of the Lost Ark fan. Your number one favorite movie.
Yep.
You're a Mission Impossible fan, and you're a intellectual person who enjoys a well-written script. I mean, it adds up. Here's what I need for you to promise me, though. Okay, when COVID-19 is done, or at least where we're able to see each other again physically, and we need to watch Tenet together. Okay, I will promise you that I will watch it again fully, at least one whole time again before this. Then when we watch it together, I want to stop and go because I have questions that I can't figure out if it's my mind that I can't understand what's going on, or is there some form of, there's something about the movie that makes me want to prove there's a flaw. I don't know why.
I love that though. I have that.
Yeah.
I have that inherent urge too.
But I'm never like that.
There's enough resources out there to really kind of smooth over any kind of big issues that I had. And they bring up more questions. There's so many questions that aren't really answered and that could be possibilities and that could be thought diversions from what you might have been focused on in a particular scene. It's like, oh, I didn't even notice this one thing in the background of this scene. Why is that person wearing a mask? Or why is the smoke in that particular scene going backwards? And there's answers for all that stuff. And like I said, you might not like them, but there's answers.
No, I don't care whether I need an answer. I don't care whether or not I like it or not. That's not relevant to me at all. And we'll just have to have like Steph and whoever I bring go out shopping for the day, and they can spend the whole day doing what they want to do while you and I spend 8 hours figuring
frame
out
by
Tenet
frame.
for Paul. Well, I mean, I need help because there's a lot of things in the movie that I start to think about and then I'm pulled out of it. And I can't stay connected to it to try to figure it out for myself. So I think I need to watch it again. And I enjoyed it the first time I watched it. I was determined to prove that it was a time traveling movie when we were talking about it. You're like, it's not a time traveling movie. And you were like, that's enough of that. And I was like, okay, he's an expert on time travel movies, so I'm gonna go with it. And so the second time I started watching it, I was like, oh, it's happening again. Because what happens in that film for me is that it's so, the visual effects, which it won the Academy Award for, which it should have, although they did not show any clips of that, which,
why would they?
Whatever. Well, because it's a visual effects. Show the whole backward scene across the little LED screens and jump from one screen to the next to the next. You make movies. How can you not do that? I don't get it. Anyway, enough of that. Another thing that happened when I was watching it a second time, and I got further than I thought, is that it's so visually arresting that I get lost in what I just saw. So I want to rewind and watch it again, but I can't do that if I want to watch a movie from beginning, middle, and end and experience it again a second time. But I also have watched quite a few of these movies a second and third time. So I would like to watch Tenet again, and I would like to give it its due because there's something there that tells me it's me, not the movie, but I can't see my way through it. So we're going to have to we're going to have to do that because I need to go to class and I need for you to be the professor and I need for you to say, this is what you're looking at. Because we talked about this a million times before. When a person is educated, what makes it a piece of art, then they can appreciate it differently. If you know the history of why this piece is important, it colors and it influences why you like it or dislike it. You're aware of it differently. I need that education about Tenet.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. All right. Well, you can say you're number one. It's my number two.
Promising Young Woman.
Yep.
I've seen this movie 3 times now.
Me too. I just watched it again last night.
I watched it 2 days before the Oscars. Again. Yeah, I was actually spending time with the guy who does our music, Chad Goodman, and he had never seen it. And I was like, of all the movies that we need to catch up on, or you need to catch up on, I think you need to start there. And afterwards, he was like, whoa. And I was like, yeah. I said, I think it's my favorite movie of the year. He goes, I can see why. really intricate, but you're able to understand it structurally. This is where the thing about forgiveness came in. Because the second time I saw it, and I think you and I have talked about this on another podcast, it dawned on me the second time I watched the movie is not a revenge movie. Not for me, it's not. The movie is about forgiveness and redemption. Because why does the lawyer get forgiven so quickly? Because he's like, I'm really sorry. She goes, I forgive you. Immediately. The second time I saw it, I was like, oh, wait, that's what she wants from everybody she's talking to. She wants them to recognize and say it was bad, horrific, and ask for forgiveness for having any part in it at all. Maybe she's not even looking for them to ask for forgiveness, but she is looking for them to recognize their part in it or their complacency in it, whatever it may be. And so I felt uplifted the last time I saw it. Does not have the most uplifting ending, I'll give you that. But I also felt fulfilled and uplifted in a different way a third time because I thought she could have never forgiven herself. Spoiler. She could have never forgiven herself for not being there. She could have never done it. So her character will be the only character in the movie that is looking for redemption and forgiveness, but never be able to find it because she will never forgive herself for that. So she goes and reaches out and starts doing these other things to find forgiveness in other ways. And it blew me away again. And Emerald Fennell is an Academy Award winner for Best Original Screenplay. It could have not gone any other way. So when she got up there and she said, I'm going to be in trouble with Mr. Soderbergh because I didn't write a speech. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Forgive me, sir. I was surprised she didn't write a speech because she said she didn't think it was going to happen. And that's humble. And I get that. But it really is just sharp and well constructed. And the shots that she does and uses, the whole thing with the halo and the center shots and the wings of the bed. We've talked about all this before. It's mind-blowing how great this film is. And for me, I said it before and I'll say it again. I think it's a movie that is appreciated, but will not really be appreciated in its own time. It just won't be. It's going to take a few years for people to really be blown away by this movie. Now, the Academy recognized it. It was nominated, for 6 Oscars or something like that? Director, second. 2 women being nominated, Emerald Fennell being one of them, Carey Mulligan being nominated, original screenplay, which it won, so forth and so on. So it was recognized, but I don't think the core elements of what makes the film important for me have been recognized in general. I'm not saying that people aren't getting it. I'm just saying there's going to be like an aha moment 10 years from now. Oh, because you can look at a piece of art and appreciate it in its time, but sometimes it takes time passing for you to really recognize the greatness of it. So there's nothing I can't say about this film that isn't great. There's nothing about it. Yeah. So,
I mean, I think that the one thing that I can say about the film is it is, well, and I already said that, but is just the style of the film. What did I say? Like dripping with style? I can't remember what I said initially when we had our episode, but it's such a singular style, and it is taking advantage of preconceived notions of what a perception of a film like this would be. And it is playing on the certain tropes initially, but then it's definitely like a Trojan horse. And in fact, the movie that I'm going to compare it to is Funny Games. Have you seen that, the Haneke film?
Mm-mm.
It makes the audience complicit in the film. And I think that that's what this movie's doing in a very subtle way, but it's also making you complicit in what's happening in the film. And it's confronting you with some difficult subject matter, number one, but also difficult situations that don't necessarily have a very clear answer. And it's doing it with a main character that is having a hard time, a main character that is doing bad things, a main character that is not necessarily the most virtuous, but the style of the film is forcing the audience into a position of agreeing with and of rooting for this character. And so we're having to constantly evaluate at every moment what we feel about the character and what we feel about ourselves, and, you know, potentially what we would do in a situation or how we might go about certain situations. So it has an amazing soundtrack. The costumes are great. The the color palette of the film that's framed by her fingernails and how they kind of run through the whole film. The choice of actors, you got Alfred Molina in there. I mean, there's just Connie Britton, Laverne Cox. There's just amazing characters throughout the film. Even her parents, Clancy Brown and Jennifer Coolidge, were great in the movie. I would not have expected either one of those in those roles.
Well, I was going to say anti-typecasting. Yeah,
Yeah.
anti-typecasting, because both of them are polar opposites of what they are in that film and almost everything else they do.
Yeah. But it just goes to
He's
show.
the sensitive dad.
Yeah.
Like, when is he ever sensitive, period, let alone the nurturing, sensitive, really probably one of the only people who fully understand her on a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he sees her differently than the rest of the world does at this point. And so when does Clancy Brown ever get to do that?
Yeah.
Never.
And-
He's Lex Luthor.
And when I was watching it last night, the scene with Alfred Molina, I like had a flashback to Boogie Nights. And, and that scene with the firecrackers and stuff. And yeah, it gives you that vibe, and not just necessarily because of the actor, but also the scenario, the vulnerability that she has in that situation. But once again, that also subverts those expectations too. You come into that situation, you expect one thing, you get another. And every time I've watched it, I've noticed multiple little things. I mean, just the fact that like the first time I watched it, I was like, at the end when she goes into the bachelor party, why does she throw her license plate? And I'm like, and keep the keys. I don't get that. And I have answers to that. I guess we could do like a mini spoiler thing, but I think that she knew that there was a potential that she was going to spoiler, big spoiler. If you've not seen Promising Young Woman, go see it and fast forward 30 seconds. Okay, go. I think she understands there's potential that she's not going to leave there alive. And so by throwing her a license plate, she is allowing them, and by keeping the keys on the tire, she's allowing them to move her car and try to get the car out of the way. But if they're searching for things, the cops would find the license plate in the proximity of that area, because they would definitely be canvassing around that area. So she's got it all planned out. And so I just love it. And I was like,
that's what that is.
Yeah, it took me 3 times, but that was one of those things.
Yeah, I never got it.
She thought about that. Emerald Fennell thought about something like that.
Oh,
so
smart.
Anyway, done with the spoilers.
Well, not exactly, because I do want to
more spoilers.
At least I admitted before I did it, right?
There you go.
There's something that I have a question about at the end of the film that I said we would talk about on this podcast, because I don't want to nitpick, but I don't understand the technical scheduling of the last part of the film. Mm-hmm. Okay, so spoiler, 2 minutes into it.
Your number 1 movie, my number 2 movie, if you've not seen it, you need to see it. Like you can rent it for $5. It's streaming. Just go do it or buy it. Just buy it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah, it's a must see. Yeah, it's definitely, if you buy it, it's worth it, because you're going to want to see it again and again. Because you're absolutely right. I never got that license thing, so thank you. Wow, that's perfect. I get it. That makes so much sense. Is it just coincidence, spoiler, is it just coincidence that her texts come in at the wedding at the same time the cops come? It's just coincidence, right? Because she would have had no way of knowing that. She could have timed that.
I think that there may have been, so obviously she got out from Molina the information and the evidence of the crime, of the rape. And so there may have been a way that she could have requested that he coordinate the police, or maybe she was able to calculate how much time it would take for the police to get enough people together to get out to where they knew they were going to be. That's the other thing, is that she only knew exactly where the suspect, which in this case, he's considered a suspect. She knew where he was going to be because she knew when the wedding was. She didn't necessarily know where he was going to be the night before the wedding or a couple days before the wedding. So, but I'm sure she submitted that as part of her information to say, like, this suspect will definitely be there at this time. And she may have told them we'll be there at 3 p.m. when the wedding was actually at 1:30 p.m. to give them time to get through the wedding. That's the only thing I could think of.
Well, I actually think that we're overthinking and it doesn't matter in the long run. And I thought that's
it just works perfectly for the movie because
absolutely. But it doesn't matter because the smiley face at the end,
it's a winky face.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is a winky face. It doesn't matter if the next thing happens. The aha moment or the voila, that moment is the fact that she in her text says, "You didn't think this was over. Well, now it is." It wouldn't matter if the cop showed up at that moment because the cops already know because of Okay. Well, it's just a nitpicking thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to get Josh to explain this to me because it's the only thing I can't fit in. But the license plate was something I couldn't fit in too. But that makes wow.
You know, it turns out that Promising Young Woman is very well written. Imagine that.
Imagine the Academy getting it right. Go figure. So,
sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes. And it's deservedly so. And I cannot wait to see what happens next for all of those people. You meaning Carey Mulligan, what she's going to do next. Bo Burnham is apparently playing Larry Bird.
Oh, yeah. He's also got a musical stand-up special coming out, I think, on Netflix soon, too.
Yeah, I just saw a trailer for it. And then whatever Emerald Fennell is going to do, who, at this point, give her money. Because
give her a break. I mean, she's got a new kid or whatever, I guess. But is she on?
Well, no, she's pregnant now.
Yeah. So yeah,
she was pregnant during the filming, and then no, I'm not saying she must get back to work right now. Get back to work. Driver. I need more projects like that from you, Emerald. Get back to work. No, I'm saying that when she does decide, at her time, after her second kid is born, I mean, being pregnant with her first kid. It worked fairly well. So, I mean, hopefully she's doing something right now while she's pregnant again, because it seemed to work. But yeah, it's going to be interesting 10 years from now to see what films she's made, because I'm sure there'll be one or two that might not work fully, or some will be better. I can't imagine from this point on, if this is her starting point where it goes from here, it can't be anything but interesting, because Promising Young Woman is my favorite movie of the year because it was the most interesting film of the year for all of those layered reasons.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, that's it. So I guess now we can focus on 2021. We got more movies. Kong versus Godzilla. Godzilla versus Kong. I can't remember what it's called. Mortal Kombat just came out. Like these are the movies that we need to focus on for 2021.
Okay. Say goodnight, Josh.
All right. Well, you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer, and you can find us on YouTube. Just search for Actor and Engineer Podcast, and we'll see you next time.